So we're going to talk a little bit about events in jQuery, the event methods. They have a new technique for handling events that I love because it's super flexible and it's easy to remember. So this new technique, which I tend to use, is the selector.on, and then in parentheses, you tell it what the event is. Is the event mouse over, mouse out, click, double click? What is the event? Give it a comma, and then you can either call a function or you can do an anonymous function. So a little example of this, this little paragraph here, I have an ID assigned as pink para. And so if we click on this, then it's going to run through the code. And so basically it's going to change the color to pink. We're going to add a text shadow and we're going to increase the size. So let's look at that. Now, what you're probably noticing is I have multiple CSS commands and I did not put a semicolon on the first two. I just put it on the end of the last one. Also, I did not prefix each one with the selector. So jQuery, to save you time typing, allows you to chain commands. So here's my first CSS command, and as long as I don't put a semicolon on the end, I can chain a second command by just doing .css and then giving it my values, and I can chain a third command. After the third and final command, that is where I put in the semicolon. Another thing that you need to take note of, especially when you're dealing with CSS, is that you have to give it the property in double quotes, a comma, and then you have to give it the value in double quotes. Okay, so basically everything has to be in double quotes. If you want to remove an event handler, okay, so basically this is a listener and this is the handler. And if you want to remove an event handler, it's just the selector.off and then whatever the event is, and then you're going to give it a function. So it will remove the handler and it won't be applied moving forward. But if it's already executed, it cannot go back in time and remove it. Okay, so there is a little example here. And if we click on this, the event is removed. Let me reload this. And let me click on that. Okay, so that has changed the paragraph. So if I remove the event and I click on this, nothing is going to happen. Okay, and it doesn't change, it can't go back in time and change this back to normal. If I click on this before I make any changes, of course, then nothing will change. And if I change things and then click on this, it's kind of useless because I've already made the changes. Okay, but that's what remove does. It does remove an event handler. Now, how I handle events is I pretty much use the on method for everything. You can also do individual mouse events. Okay, click, double click, mouse enter, mouse leave, etc., etc. So you've got your selector dot and then whatever the event is. Okay, so just looking at here, I've got an ID of button 3, and when I click that button, I'm going to have all of this fun stuff happen. And you'll notice I'm using that chaining technique. And after I chain all of the CSS changes, I'm actually tagging on some new text that is going to be entered into the paragraph, replacing what is there. So Here is that live example. So this is a pretty boring paragraph. So if I click on Add Interesting Style, it's going to zip through all this code and change the text. So this is very similar to the previous example. Okay? The only difference is instead of using the click event, it's using double click. So if I double click on this quickly, hopefully, then it makes that change. And here's another example using mouse enter and mouse leave. So right now there's actually a menu here, but you cannot see it until you hover. Okay, so mouse enter is when the mouse is over the element. And you can see it changes the color of the background, the color of the text. It makes it visible. And it's setting a margin, a left margin of 0. And then when I leave, then it goes back to this default state where it's hidden, background is green, all that fun stuff. Okay, so keyboard events. These are kind of fun and they're super easy. If you remember, there was quite a bit more code when we did this in JavaScript than there is in jQuery. Again, it's inside our document ready function. And so basically every single time they press a key, so it's the key press event, right? It's going to run through this anonymous function. And all the anonymous function does is it updates a number in span, and it basically adds 1 to it. So here's span, and it's actually initialized to 0. So it takes 0 plus 1. The first time that we press a key, puts a 1 in there. Then we press another key, it puts a 2 in there, 3, 4, etc. So let's take a look here. So here is our input box. And the minute I start keying, you'll see it starts counting my key presses, including spaces. So super easy to do in jQuery. This basically does the same thing, except for instead of looking for a key press, it's looking for when I push the key down and when I let the key up. And all it's doing, it's not counting keystrokes with this, it's changing the color, which I thought was kind of fun. So when I push the key down, it's going to look light yellow, and when I lift the key up, it looks light green. Oh. Let's see. Thought I fixed that link. Let me see here. Reload the page. All right, hold on a second. Well, it does help if you transfer the change. So now I do have it, and the link will work for you guys. And so, because this is kind of fun. So if I push, oh, wrong one. Try that again. Here we go. This is the one that's fun. So enter your name. So if I press the key down, it's one color, and when I lift up, it's another. So it looks like it's flickering. So that link does work now. So you will be able to play with that. As far as form events go, you are going to be using one of these in your assignment when we do the to-do list or whatever kind of list you're going to create app. And so there is a submit event, a change event, a focus event, a blur event. We're going to learn a little bit more about the focus event on actually the very first exercise. The focus event has an interesting little quirk because it does not work if it's initiated from a click. But I do have a workaround for that you will be learning in the lab assignment. Okay, but if you want to practice with any of these, you are going to be using some of them in the lab assignment. Okay, but if you want to play around with these, you can see that this is very simple. It's looking for the form to be submitted, and it displays an alert. So if we hit that, you get the little alert. And this is looking for a change in the box. So the minute we change something, it's going to display an alert. Or it should. Yeah, so I have to kind of click away. But when you change it and you click, then that's when you get the alert. Okay, but I think it is helpful to kind of go through these examples just so you get a feel for what they do. The select event is kind of interesting. So this little box is input.test. So it's an input box, and I have the test class applied to it. And so if I put focus on it, it changes. When I hovered, it changed. When I click in it, it changes. And favorite TV show. I got to pick a new favorite. Okay, but then if I click away, that's when it gets the blur. So let's see, we'll try it again. Click away. Okay, so that is considered blur. Now it's hover, and now it's focused. And if you want to play around with that, I do have the same stuff over here. Okay, and so that just kind of lets you play with it. And as you're doing this, if you want to see what's going on, I have a console log that you can watch. So if I click on here, you can see the focus is triggered. Let me change the name. So I got the focus and the select. Okay, then I did a change and a blur. Now it's got a focus on last name. And you can see I've got check boxes changing, and I submitted. Okay, so as you're going through here, you can kind of see what's being triggered. And we already talked about document ready. That's kind of built in. And what we haven't talked about is scroll. So if you wanted to, and I don't know why you'd want to do this, but if you wanted to count how far somebody scrolled, that is what this example does. But it does illustrate how scroll works. So it's kind of similar to the key press, actually. So at this point, there's been no scrolling in this box, but if I use my mouse wheel, okay, you can see that the scroll is changing, and it'll also change if I click. Okay, and again, that's very similar to the keyboard or the key press examples, where we're using a span initialized to 0, and then we're updating that.